Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Whiskey, Wheels, and Wounds. As always, I'm Shawn, 9-year Air Force vet.
I'm Steve, 4-year combat veteran.
Really?
I mean,
We're going to mix it up a little bit? What an asshole. All right. Well, 4-year combat veteran guys getting ready to do this week's featured whiskey.
so this week's featured whiskey is Hoot and Young. The region is Indiana. The distillery is MGP. Bottler Hoot and Young. The mash bill is 99% corn, 1% malted barley. Um, the cask is refill oak, aged 12 years. ABV is 46%. Non-chilled filtered natural color, and the price is MSRP is $70. So Hoot and Young are they were Delta Force operators. Hoot is from Black Hawk Down. Famously, he's the one who said, "This is my trigger finger, sir." And how it was depicted in the movie, of course, was not how it happened in real life, but that's where the fame comes from. And we're doing movies today, so I figured.
And that's a good disclaimer in. We're talking about war movies today.
Yep.
But we both acknowledge that Hollywood takes liberties with said war movies.
Most certainly.
But we are going to pick war movies, not military movies, but specifically war movies.
Correct.
That we think are some of the best war movies we have ever seen. Doesn't necessarily mean they're the most accurate or the greatest or anything like that. This is us, and it's just movies. We're not talking about miniseries or anything like that. Just movies, right?
Right.
Okay. I'll make sure my homework matches your homework, because
you're all over it.
Like white on rice and a paper plate in a snowstorm.
Your fucking analogy, man.
Okay, look, they're very descriptive, but do they not give you the visual picture?
Yes, I'm there with you.
All right.
I'm there with you.
I do have two on my list that I don't know if they quite qualify for war movies.
Well, I mean, we can talk about it.
One's a documentary.
We can talk about it. I mean, you go ahead. You can lead us off. And
all right. Well, so I am going to throw one in there that's like 90 years old.
I mean,
but it's OG as a motherfucker.
I mean, if it's a movie, it's a movie.
And that's the 1930s, All Quiet on the Western Front.
There you go. I mean, that's where you're starting.
Yeah, I figure I'll throw the OG in there first. I remember watching it when I was a kid. We had to read the book and all that.
Right.
The thing that tripped me out the most when I was doing a little looking into it. Do we have a problem? Oh, is the guys that acted in that movie in the 1930s most of them were World War I vets.
Right.
And they were completely oblivious about what was to come down the pipeline in another 10 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're telling the story of, the Great War,
right,
thinking it's going to be the war to end all wars. And within 10 years after that movie was done, the whole world's going to erupt into another war again.
Right.
So by today's standard, it's probably not a great movie. I'm probably looking at it through rose-colored glasses because I watched it when I was a kid. But it's a powerful message. And then when you think about, that social impact of it, and then they did a remake of it not too long ago, but I don't want to read when I watch movies now. So,
right.
But yeah, so I think that's like that's the standard for a long time of what a war movie should have been.
Right. And and I guess nowadays, if you look back on it, I think we as a audience to war movies were spoiled with CGI, and we're spoiled.
Oh yeah,
we're spoiled with, the realism, and it's hard. It's hard to watch a movie like that, and in black and white. And
visually enjoy it.
right, you know,
But the message is powerful.
yeah, right,
And that's kind of why I put it on there, because the messaging in that one has stood the test of time.
right. And so I'll transition to mine, Schindler's List. You know, not a traditional war movie, but at the same time, it takes place during World War II, and um, you know, businessman, German businessman, you know, saved many many lives in that movie, and you know, like when I was going down the list of movies, um, you know, it had it, you know, it telling a true story. You know, it you know um was important to me. And there's some movies that were on my top 10 list that I omitted because of recent information coming out about the realism of those movies or
That
the
that that wouldn't have been one that stars Mark Wahlberg,
I
would it?
mean uh it may, but again, like before I had, movie posters on this wall, and that, that was one of them. Because of how, if a war movie can put me in the setting, right? And have me feel like I'm there, gives me the smells, gives me the, you know, that's what I relate to. I can't really relate to, being a German businessman. However, I can relate to having the humanity to know, you know, I'm gonna take the hard right over the easy wrong, even if it kills me.
Yeah. You can empathize with his desire to be a good human being.
Right. His desire to be like, you know, my country's doing this stuff. I'm not part of that. And I'm gonna do my part to do what I think is right. And we should all strive. You know what I mean? Like, regardless of what you think about our government, you should strive every day to do right by you. So that's why Schindler's List.
I'm going to make it an appropriate funny about
Okay.
Schindler's List. Have you ever looked at the name of the escalators in most malls?
No.
It's the Schindler's Lift.
Oh,
The actual brand is Schindler. I call it the Schindler's Lift because it's, come on, that's fucking funny.
yeah.
All right.
No, it is funny.
All right. So another one I got on here is one that I watched a lot when I was a kid.
Uh-huh.
Um, and and Sarge and I talked about this movie the other night. It's the movie that made him want to become an infantryman,
Okay.
the Big Red One.
And I mean, and then he went on to be a member of the Big Win
Yep.
Red One. So
Yeah. It was a now I mean it's definitely not one that's stood the test of time,
right,
but it was important to me when I was a kid. I watched it a lot. Like
right,
we had that shit on VHS and I
yeah,
probably watched it all the time. But I think it's the story of Lee Marvin's character, the sergeant, from World War One as a young private when he kills that German and then finds out that the war ended before he killed him, to the end of World War II. Spoiler alert. Um, he kills another German and then finds out that the war had ended, but the German that he thought he killed was still alive, and so he worked to save his life. Like the character arc there was kind of neat. I did read about the guy a little bit. The guy who created or made it was Sam Fuller, and he based some of the stories, specifically about the sergeant, off of his time when he was in World War II. So it's kind of interesting.
yeah. I mean, I don't I don't recall if I don't think I've seen it.
So Lee Marvin plays the sergeant, and then you've got the dude from Revenge of the Nerds with the glasses. He plays one of the guys. Mark Hamill plays one of the guys.
Okay.
It's like a 4-man squad. They call them the sergeant's four horsemen.
Yeah,
uh,
I don't think I saw it.
yeah, I mean it's like 81, 82, somewhere back there. So I mean it's not like, and it was low budget even at the time. So, but it was one that stuck with me throughout my life as I was, 'cause, I watched it when I was a young impressionable lad.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I thought after the conversation I had with Sarge, it was pretty fitting.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, you know, war movies war movies I watched as a young impressionable lad was Missing in Action. Uh and then when I joined the army and figured out you couldn't wear beards, I was very disappointed.
I mean, for entertainment though, the missing in actions
Come
were
on.
pretty good.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
That and Delta Force. I
Oh,
mean, any you
dude,
can't go wrong with Chuck Norris,
nope,
man. I tell you,
nope.
you know, it's 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 why Chuck Norris is a mythical creature in the military. Um, well, I guess he's just a mythical creature altogether, but but Missing in Action is not on my list. Neither is Rambo or Commando or
Commando's a good way to say it. These are entertaining action flicks,
right. Yes.
but they're not
Yeah.
um monumental pieces of cinema when it comes to war depiction.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's one man taking on everybody in all those films.
unless it's about Audie Murphy.
Right. I mean,
Because then
right.
he did take on
Uh,
one man took on
you know,
everybody.
and To Hell and Back is a you know pretty good war movie that Audie Murphy plays himself in,
Yeah. How
right?
crazy is that?
Yeah. So and anybody who's ever gone to the Audie Murphy board, you've watched To Hell and Back. Being in the Third Infantry Division like I was, you've seen, heard, uh, I mean, I have a poster that says "To Hell and Back" with Audie Murphy on it. I mean, um, one,
Could you imagine though being on that set and Audie Murphy's playing himself and like he's just doing what happened
yeah, and
and
then
they're like no 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 you got to tone that shit down.
yeah,
But I lived this.
right, right, yeah. So my next film, The Deer Hunter,
Oh,
right,
I'm
uh,
busting out some periphery types.
right. I mean, um, another way I judge movies is by having parts in there that just stays in your brain.
Yep.
The Russian roulette scene. I mean, I think that movie might have uh, made Russian roulette more popular than um, anything. But a group of guys from a small town in Pennsylvania, a steel mill town. I can relate to that. And going to war and then the war affecting them in such a way. Um, and it's my era. It's what I grew up into. So yeah, The Deer Hunter. Um, young Robert De Niro in there. Before he lost his fucking mind, but irregardless. Um, yeah, I mean, I just like the movie. You know what I mean? I like the
It speaks to you.
well, it hit on it's one of the first movies that hit on the struggles after war. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it shows the war, it shows all the the trauma you go through in war, but it also shows how people respond to that once they try to get back to their real lives. And yeah, it speaks to me. So Deer Hunter.
I'm gonna go with an interesting one here, and that would be Platoon.
All-time favorite movie.
I mean, so uh, Oliver Stone. It's loosely based on his time in the Vietnam War.
Yep.
Um, I know the extra drama that was put in there and stuff like that, but it really, in my view, captures the essence of what a small unit dynamics are like.
Mm-hmm.
Like it really doesn't matter what's going on with the rest of the army. It's that platoon, that small unit dynamic, and it shows a really good contrast between William Defoe's character and Tom Berenger's character as
Mm-hmm.
two different NCOs
Right.
with two completely different opinions of how things should be done,
Yeah.
and how the men are impacted, but also kind of split between those two and what their visions of right and wrong are.
Yeah. And Oliver Stone, how he did it, he took everyone, I believe they went to Panama. Uh,
Was it Panama or Guam or something like
it,
that?
it,
But
it,
yeah, he whew,
South, I mean, they went, Captain Dye, um, I can't think of his first name. He was a captain. Um,
he's the dude that plays
he plays the captain.
the colonel on Band of Brothers too.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
he is a what do they call that,
Consultant.
consultant,
Yeah.
and then he'll put cameos. He's in a lot of,
Platoon was one of the first ones he did
yeah. He was, yes,
before he developed his
but he was
the
a
business he does now.
right, but he was a officer in Vietnam, um, and he plays the company commander in Platoon. But they had a boot camp. I'm pretty sure they went to. Oh,
We're gonna look it up
yeah,
now.
you got to look it up. But anyways, when they sent the whole cast as one, and as they filmed, and as cast members got killed in the movie, they left. So the remaining cast had that emptiness. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't stay around for extra. When they died in the movie, they left. They left. So that was pretty good. And um, yeah, one of my all time favorite movies. Um, I watch it all the time, and you're still looking it up.
Ah, here we go. Most of it was done in the Philippines.
All right, yeah,
54 days.
yeah, 54. And I mean, that's pretty quick too.
Yeah.
Uh, Pretty quick film. Um,
Scenes were shot in Mount Macling, Laguna Province.
and
Uh,
they were having like a civil war there.
Dale, by the way, is his name. Dale Dye.
Dale die. Yeah, okay. Uh, but yeah, they were having like a civil war type deal there. But yeah, Platoon is um, one of my favorites.
I mean, Oliver Stone's a great filmmaker.
Yeah. And then, like you said, he used his experience from Vietnam to tell a story. You liked the cuts from Inside the Hut, guys over here playing cards, giving the LT shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Like I said, to me now, not having been in that type of combat scenario, but to me, it felt like it really captured the essence of what it was like to be in a small unit like that.
yeah,
The
that
small unit dynamic.
yeah, that's absolutely what we did. I mean, absolutely. Um, so in keeping with, my next movie will be Full Metal Jacket,
Oh,
right? And I think, Full Metal Jacket, again, the criteria is rememberable scenes, and the first, I don't know, uh 15 minutes of the movie um is the most it's the most memed, most repeated, um Yeah,
And that movie almost feels like two separate movies
it most certainly is. Like people forget that there's a war movie at the
after.
end. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like it's the most like anytime somebody says anything about boot camp or basic training, they put that movie on.
Yeah.
Like, you want to be talked like, you want to be talked to like this, and and it encapsulates, exactly like you feel when I said if it puts you there,
Yeah.
it puts you standing in front of Lee Ermey and him, fucking breaking you down and yeah, I feel that. You know what I mean? And um and then you can feel like you said, the second part of that, you know, there's a lot of uh fucking, you know, uh recited lines out of the second part of it too, But
And Stanley Kubrick's one of those filmmakers who was always pushing the envelope. So, Full Metal Jacket, especially at the time, was a very uh, extreme of what a war movie was.
right.
Because you had that, Apocalypse Now, um, Platoon. Those were the ones about that time that were kind of twisted, I guess is a good way to say it.
Yeah.
Um, as far as the rah patriotic. Um, but what's really neat about that movie, though, is that Arlie Ermy was originally hired as a consultant.
Yeah.
And if you watch the movie at the end, the crew chief on the helicopter, that's the guy who was originally supposed to play Gunnery Sergeant Hartman.
And you can't imagine anybody else on the face of this planet being that guy.
Mhm.
There's no one else.
He he truly did love the Corps.
Yeah.
Like his whole life was dedicated to pushing forward the concerns and the causes of the Marine Corps.
Yes.
Um, but he encapsulated that role and ad-libbed so
Yeah.
much, and then parlayed that character, which was probably part character, part him,
Yes.
to all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Like you can never look at Arlie Ermy and never think of Gunnery Sergeant Hartman.
Right. And it's one of those things where some people do a role like that, and that's what they're known for, and they don't want to be known for that thing. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? They don't want
the
to be
typecast.
they don't want to be pigeonholed. But
Like,
there's no one else on the face of the
yeah,
planet that I've never been to Marine Corps boot camp, but if it wasn't like that, if I went to Marine Corps boot camp and you did not degrade me like that, I didn't get my money's worth.
yeah.
Like,
Most of my life, man, I could just rattle
yeah,
that whole thing off.
yeah,
Like, yeah,
and um, it, but he gets killed. The pushback to that is, hey, if you treat people better, they won't shoot you with 7.62. Okay,
full metal
right,
jacket.
right. Okay, I get that. However, you know, you need that. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, look, the majority of the guys were able to survive Gunnery Sergeant Hartman. Private Pyle was not mental. Hartman broke him.
right.
You know what I mean? He mentally broke him, and he wasn't one that could be built back up.
Yeah, and
Um,
he made it. He and he also used peer counseling.
yes.
You know what I mean? Um, and so much so that when I got the basic training, I told them motherfuckers, I'm like, anybody hits me with a bar of soap, I'm fucking you up on the spot. Just understand. Understand. You fucking hit me with soap, I'm fucking you up on the spot. So yeah, so Full Metal Jacket. Again, I mean, it's one of those things where you know it. It's like the highs of that first part of the movie, and you forget about the second part of the movie because of that. I mean, the peak of the boot camp scene is so high. That's why the second half of the movie, you lose some. But
And it's an interesting story because it's basically told from Joker's point of view,
right,
who ended up going there as a
yeah,
journalist, which Gunnery Sergeant Hartman lost his damn mind
yeah.
on as
You,
well.
you, who you think you're, Mickey Spillane? But yeah, I mean, and then just the contrast of him being at war, him wearing the peace symbol, with Born to Kill as um, and as he explains to the overweight colonel that he's trying to explain the duality of men or whatever. But yeah, it's I mean, it a lot of quotes have come from that movie.
Yes.
A lot of Two Live Crew made a song about
M-
that movie. So
My next one is going to be about one of my absolute favorite military historical figures,
okay,
and that's General George S. Patton.
yes,
Um, I, I again watched it when I was a kid,
uh huh,
and his the portrayal of him in that movie is amazing. Um, I I think that's one of the movies that got me started on my historical deep dives about certain things.
right,
But the reports that you find out about how there are aspects in that movie where his own command hated him
mm-hmm,
and the Germans feared him.
mm-hmm,
And and again, like Gunnery Sergeant Hartman, he does all these amazing things, but to contrast that, he also treats people like crap. And so it cost him a lot in his career.
yeah, and it's one of those things where it's tough love, and he'll treat you like shit when you warrant it. He But he treated everybody like shit that warranted. You know what I mean? Superiors, subordinates, and
He was the type of person that had confidence in the belief that what he was doing was the right course of action,
yeah,
and he was going to defend his course of action even if that meant fucking himself.
yeah, and you know, and that's when you think you're the smartest person in the room. Not think when you know you're the smartest person in the room. You know, at one point, Omar Bradley is his subordinate and becomes his commander. You know what I mean? Uh, just to get in the fight, he had to eat some crow. Um, they made him a decoy. Division in Africa. Um, yeah, it's you know he's lost more stars than most people have obtained. You know what I mean?
The whole
Uh,
scene with him standing on the stage in front of the flag, it's so
yeah,
iconic.
yeah, and it's and also it also teaches you that generals have their own uniform standards, their own all that nonsense that you can have a pearl handle revolver, uh, and things of that nature.
Yeah, George C. Scott did an amazing job.
Yeah, yeah, and Patton is one of those. figures that men wanted to fight for him. It's the reason he went farther, faster, than any other army in World War II, because people wanted to fight for him, and the ones that didn't want to fight for him, he scolded them,
Yep.
and was forced to apologize and things of that nature. But you know, I believe Patton is one of those men. While you're under him, you can find ways to pick him apart. When you move to another command, you that
Appreciate.
tough love, you know what I mean? Tough love is still love.
Yep. You appreciate the method to his
Right.
madness. And
Yeah.
he was really oddball in some of his thoughts too,
Yeah.
his beliefs in reincarnation and
Yep.
things like that. But as far as a military genius, I
Yeah.
mean,
And he I love anybody that says what they feel without worrying about the consequences.
and what a lot of people don't realize is he also was a big force um in the Americans' development of armored warfare.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, um and he was a tactician
Yeah.
and knew his shit. So
Yeah.
Patton was a good movie.
Yes.
Um where am I at? I put Hacksaw Ridge on my list.
As did I.
Um, it's just the whole story that encompasses, the fight that he had to go through just to get in the fight. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Is powerful. It's a powerful um thing when someone can stand so firmly on their beliefs, so so firmly on their convictions. I'm not trying to avoid war. I want to go to war. I want to do my part. I just want to be a medic. And you know, I mean, today's military gives people shit. You know what I mean? Like, um,
I think the line that really encompasses it is, and I'm paraphrasing because I know I'm not going to get it right. Um, with the world so hell bent on tearing itself apart,
yes,
is it a bad thing that I just want to put a little piece of it back together?
yes, and that's pretty close. But yeah, um, and the evolution of thought of his command team, especially his company command team, um to to think of him one way. The soldiers around him thought of him one way, you know but they were the eyes they looked up at when they were wounded on the battlefield.
It's like what, 75, 77 guys he saved.
Yeah. um
And what's even crazier is, um, that since I watched that movie over the last couple of months, I spent a lot of time watching The Fat Electrician on YouTube.
right.
He did a video on the 77th Infantry Division that was a all drafty division,
The old bastards.
the old bastards.
Yeah.
That was Desmond Doss's unit.
Yeah.
So I mean, the average age of that whole division was like 33 years old.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, to know that that was the division he was part of, and they were th- they were they were given the honorary title as the 77th Marine Division.
Right. Yeah.
And if you know anything about the Marines,
Yeah.
the Army does not get called a Marine unit.
Right. Right.
But those guys were so good at what they did
Yeah.
and how they did it. And then you're like, all right, well, there was the standard of amazing in this unit.
Yeah.
And then you had this medic who was a conscientious objector
Yeah.
that not only elevated to that standard, but far surpassed it.
Yeah.
Like that's the best of the best.
Yeah. Yep. And it's one of those things where at that time everybody wanted to serve. Everybody wanted to do his part. Now he had his own personal reasons why he didn't want to pick up a gun, and I get it. I don't particularly want to kill anybody anymore myself, so I get that. Um, but then to go on and do what he did, you know, um, you know, kept telling himself just one more, just one more, you know. That is a I mean, that
And I think the character arc of his dad was pretty good too.
right, but that is a motto
Yes.
we can all just one more, you know what I mean? And you know,
Especially for what we do as far as, what trying to advance veteran causes.
right. Yeah.
Just one more guy. Just one more.
Yeah. And it's yeah, and we had the pleasure of riding on the Desmond Doss Parkway.
Uh-huh.
Um so I mean that encompasses
Again, you're gonna get something named after you.
right. Yeah. You're gonna get something named after
All right, so now I can cross that one off my list. I'm gonna put Saving Private Ryan on there.
you. Yeah. And yeah.
and and the biggest like, so the movie was impactful. Like there's so many great things you can say about it, but when that movie came out in theaters, the reports from World War II vets that left that movie with the impact that it had on them, I think that speaks volumes to that movie.
Yeah.
But
Shook.
yeah,
They were shook.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it brought them back to 1942,
Yeah. The the
1943.
the the first 25 minutes of that movie is the most accurate depiction of war ever caught on, what I mean,
Yep.
ever caught on film other than, you know, the VHS tapes people had in Iraq and Afghanistan. You know what I mean? Like, th- yeah, Jesus Christ. Uh,
and 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 the thing that from that movie that sticks with me all of these years later is at the very end when he's standing at the captain's grave and he's asking if he's done enough, if
yep,
he's lived a good enough life.
yep,
Did I earn it? Did I deserve it?
yep,
um that, like, I got chills now. Like
yeah,
that scene in that movie is one of the most impactful scenes I've ever seen in a movie, um, especially now
yeah,
with the the things we talked about last season about different parts of our mental health. That little clip right there really, really fucking hits home as far as the way you feel about people that didn't make it back,
yeah.
but you did.
Well, and also, I mean, it ties into back when he found out his brothers are dead. You know what I mean? And he says, "I'm staying with my brothers here." You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And you tell my mom I stayed with my brothers here. You know, um, by his actions then, and then saying it when he's elderly. Tell me I've been a good man.
yep,
You know what I mean? Tell me, and knowing, these guys came looking for me. You know, um, because they were doing what they were ordered to do. You know, and but yeah, the first 25 minutes of that movie, most most impactful, most authentic war depiction ever on film. And then, you know, they were also even um they also depicted the the dark humor, you know, when they're sitting on buckets going through the dog tags. You know what I mean? And they're like, you know, holding up and there's a hole through it, and you're like, oh, that's a bitch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the dark humor we have, you know what I mean? And yeah, I mean, what a good movie.
Yes.
And it's one of those things where, you know, um teachers got drafted and they became hardened badasses. You know what I mean? Like, you know, because the call to serve was so great that, you know, people were leaving classrooms and factories and you know, whatever the case may be, to go serve. And you know, I went from a classroom to a ranger battalion.
And then it's everything that Tom Hanks and Spielberg learned on that movie and developing those techniques is the reason why we got one of the greatest war miniseries ever created in
Ever created. Yeah,
Band of
yeah.
Brothers.
And I mean, Band of Brothers is not on my list.
Because it's not a movie.
Right.
That's why. Because
But
if it would have been, it'd have been way up there.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I
And
mean,
even the Pacific, it wasn't as impactful as Band of Brothers was because it only told basically three stories.
right.
But it was still
Yes.
very good.
Yeah. I like, you know, it's one of those things where I lost a lot of, like, some people forget the Pacific. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah,
A lot of people forget the Pacific, and you know, they're like, Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, we bombed the Japanese, that was it. You know what I mean? No,
there's a whole lot in between
there was
there.
a lot of fight between there.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And there was a lot of, you know, it was a naval fight. It was island hopping. You know, the Marines moving from one island to another island to another island, to a, you know, a volcanic rock. You know, so a lot of people forget that Japanese were in World War. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
they don't forget that the Japanese were in World War II, but the Japanese fought more than at Pearl Harbor and more than got bombed at Nagasaki and
yeah.
Hiroshima.
And it was brutal warfare
Yeah,
because unlike the European theater, the the Japanese didn't surrender.
yeah, they
That
did.
there was a whole Bushido honor type thing,
Yeah,
and
yeah. So
um,
the Pacific, and you know, in the movie, the docu series, the Pacific, you know, they tried to make it personal. They try, you know, they put some love story in there, and that's very important.
especially because I did a bunch of research about John Basilone and his wife,
Uh-huh.
and she never remarried.
I mean, a lot of
Never.
a lot of you know, back then when you asked a woman, "Can I write you?" and she said yes, you were de facto together.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And if you wrote letters from war, you know, that's your girl. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
man, yeah, you were de facto together, and love back then meant something.
yeah,
There was, you know, there was some finality to saying I love you back then. And but yeah, again, you know, you receive the Medal of Honor, and the only place you want to go is back with your men. You know, um, that's some heroic shit.
yeah.
But
So, Saving Private Ryan.
yeah, Saving Private Ryan.
Now we're on to you.
where am I at? I said Hacksaw Ridge. Black Hawk Down.
That's on my list as
Yeah,
well.
Black Hawk Down. I was in. It's one of the. bl- uh, You know, um, the Battle of Mogadishu was the first major conflict that happened when I joined the army, and you know, being during this time, I was in Korea, um, and moved. I moved to Fort Stewart Hunter Army Airfield uh, right after that, and so I was down there with a lot of veterans from Task Force Ranger um, that they left from Hunter, and it was like I said, it was the first major conflict after Desert Storm. It was, and there was mixed views about that conflict, and you know, and then ironically, I was in Korea again when the movie came out, and you know, the, the movie tells the story from the operation perspective,
Yeah.
from basically from the ranger perspective. They sprinkle, the Delta operators in there to give it some flair, but it's mostly from the ranger perspective. They don't hit on Task Force 214 from the 10th Mountain Division, or the Marines that were in Mogadishu then as well. Um, Task Force 214 of the 10th Mountain Division was the QRF. Um, and hell, they can make a movie about the fight those some bitches had getting from the airfield to the crash sites, because after they were called out after the birds went down, and they went out on deuce and a halfs. They they rolled as a QRF element in the back of fucking deuces and a half with sandbags on the floors and on the sides. And you know, and that's a lesson we took into Iraq with us, into Afghanistan. And we were still doing that same dumb shit in Iraq and Afghanistan, of putting motherfuckers in the back of open. In '03, we were in fucking soft skin Humvees.
Yep.
Right? Raw. So we didn't learn a motherfucking thing. We just had more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It, don't- but the I think it captured war. It captured CQB like no other movie. Moving block to block, house to house, uh, getting separated. Each individual knowing their responsibilities in that movie, being able to plug and play Rangers with Delta, and you know,
No, it was a great flick.
yeah.
It also came out in a time when we had just had 9/11.
Hmm.
It came out a couple months after that, and the country was still reeling from that, but trying to be, forward thinking. And then this movie comes out that highlighted it highlighted the the bravery and all of that, but it also showed how vulnerable our military might can be with, you know, dudes in flip flops and RPGs.
See, now I looked at it as their vulnerability, and they were vulnerable. Their vulnerability was because of the bureaucracy.
I do not disagree with
Right.
you.
But that's what I'm saying. And that's, again, a lesson we didn't learn going forward.
No,
You know what I
because
mean?
we didn't learn it after Vietnam.
Right.
We didn't learn it after Desert Storm.
Right.
We didn't learn it after everything that happened in Kosovo.
Yep.
We didn't learn it after 9/11.
Right.
We didn't learn it for the 20 years we were in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
We didn't learn it when we were in Iraq.
Right.
See the reoccurring theme here?
Yeah.
Politicians are the reason that
D-
we can't have
Most certainly.
lasting peace after conflicts.
Now, I mean, you know, um, in that time, there was a push from Washington, you know, let's get it, let's get it done, let's get it done, let's get it done. And, you know, they requested armor. No, armor was denied. You know, they had to ride into Mogadishu to go um, rescue, if you will, pin down Rangers and Delta Force in UN vehicles supplied by Pakistan. You know what I mean? Um, holy shit.
Yeah. When I meant by vulnerability, it was that showed what some determined people,
Oh, yeah.
and then we saw that exact thing transpire for the next 20
Yeah.
years.
And it's also one of those things where it's guerrilla warfare. So it's anybody that gains a sack and has their a weapon in arm's reach, they can become a combatant. You know what I mean? Um,
And that's basically what it was like
and
throughout the entire Middle Eastern conflicts.
yeah, you're right. And in the military, we use the 1/3, 2/3 principle, right? So if we as United States military, if we're going to attack a squad element, we're going to use a platoon element to hit a squad. If it's a platoon, we're in a company and battalion and so forth. We're going to use a larger element than the ones that we're going to fight. Um, they used 166 people, right, to get one guy. That's a 1/3, 2/3 thing, right? And that one guy had a handful of bodyguards, right? They had no idea that the whole fucking city was going to fight back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Because you think you're trying to get them the food and wins heart
right,
and minds and all of
yeah,
that. And
and it's but a bullet don't give a fuck.
nope.
Bullet don't. And again, it's guys out there doing the bidding for these politicians that they want. I need my list of achievements to be this. I need to stand in front of the American people and say this is what happened since I've been president or governor or whatever the fuck. Um, yeah, and nothing shows you that you're a fucking pawn than depictions of you know this.
So I'm going to use this same concept and thought process
Uh huh.
to take me into one that I don't know if I would consider it a war movie per se,
Uh huh.
but it definitely fits into what we just talked about, and that's 13 Hours.
Man, yes. I mean, it's
That, like I said, that was one of the ones that's not what I would consider a war movie,
right.
but I mean it's a really good movie that showcases an intense combat battle.
Yes. Yeah, and they were all former. They were all former military. So,
Yeah.
um, and man, 13 Hours. It's a good movie. It's a again, it shows the wherewithal. Um, one okay, so it shows that we're training elite soldiers to do the bidding of this country, and we're not paying them enough to continue to make it worth it. And guys are saying, I can use my skills over there and I can set my family up for future successes and still, you know, do the bidding. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so let me go over here. Let me be a private contractor, or let me work with the CIA or things of that nature.
State Department and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Um,
But and like I said, piggybacking off of what we were just talking about with Black Hawk Down, after that happened, we learned so much about. So, sorry, after the actual event happened, but before the movie came out, we learned so much about how the the politicians were the barrier to success.
right. Yeah. That, you know, um, that people are willing to put their lives on the line and protect things that you deem are vital, but then you also don't deem them vital enough to help protect those who protect.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, a lot of the shit that came out about Benghazi is terrible.
Yes.
On the um, people lost their lives, and granted, there's pushback. Oh, when you go after the money, that's what you get. But whatever, you know what I mean?
So
No,
what about the ambassador? Because he didn't go after the money.
right? No
You know what I
one,
mean?
no one deserves, no one deserves to be left out on an island by
Yeah.
themselves.
And you can say, well, they were contractors or whatever you want, but their whole job there was protecting the embassy and the
Right,
ambassador and all of that. So did their lives not matter either?
right,
I mean, they weren't chasing the money; they were doing what the government needed. So I give a lot of pushback on that. They were chasing the money thing. So because they weren't
right,
the
right,
only ones that died.
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And your government. It was a glaring example of your government not doing everything possible to deter, you know, um, this from happening,
Yeah.
especially on September 11th. You know what I mean? Um, th- you should have a heightened state of fucking anything can happen uh,
On that day.
on that day. You know what I mean?
And even you would have thought we would have learned our lesson from Beirut about our embassies and hotspots like that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so yeah, that was one of the ones I put on the list.
I
Um,
like 13 hour.
again, it's a movie that has a powerful message.
Yeah.
So
And, it's one of those things where people that were there are able to speak about it, and they're able to speak on the people that are not here.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And, you know, yes, they're saying something contradicting to what our government's saying. I would expect that because,
it's the government.
you know what I mean? Like,
We're the government. Trust
you
us.
being you being contradicting to what these people are saying doesn't make them less wrong.
Yeah,
It kind of makes them more right. You
yeah.
know what I mean? In my eyes, like you're saying, oh no, it didn't happen that way. You know, if you were saying, yep, that's exactly how it happened, I'll be like, well, that has to be bullshit. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, 13 hours. You know, I I think again, it's a black eye um, on the politics of war.
Yeah.
It's a black eye on the politics of war. Um, you just say what you want about we should never have been in Iraq. Fine, but we were there,
Yeah.
and when we were there, we were doing great things for the Iraqi people. Well, that ain't sustainable. I mean, okay, but you know, just to up and fucking leave.
Yeah. You can disagree with the war. You can disagree with a lot of things. But understand these movies,
Right.
13 Hours,
Yep.
Black Hawk Down,
Yep.
just about anything that deals with Vietnam,
Right.
um, all of these movies highlight that as much as you want to disagree with what's going on, your disagreement should be with policy.
Yeah. Yeah.
100% with policy.
Yeah. But
Be-
as soon as boots hit the ground, that all goes. You know what I mean? You can you can stand out here and argue policy all you want, and we should get blah blah blah. Boots are on the ground now. 100% of your focus, your support, logistical. These motherfuckers are like in Iraq. If you're fucking welding steel plates to the side of your fucking truck to make them more survivable, we have a problem.
Yep.
We have a fucking problem.
And that's what movies like fucking 13 Hours, Black Hawk Down, these other ones, that we've talked about, that's part of the reason why they're so impactful is because if you've been in theater, you understand how the politicians and policy limit not only your survivability but also mission success.
Right. Yeah.
And not and necessarily mission success isn't die motherfucker die. Sometimes mission success is, trying to get the people on board, trying to get the populace to you know it it I don't know, like I don't know the history of all of it, but I kind of think that basically after the Korean War, the, the quote unquote the government, politicians after the Korean War started caring less and less about success in conflict.
Yeah.
Because if you look historically since the Korean War, it has just been ugly black eye after ugly black eye after
Right.
ugly black eye.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the servicemen and women are the ones that have to carry those black eyes.
Yeah. It's and it's terrible. I mean, terrible. My next movie, We Were Soldiers.
That's on my list too.
We Were Soldiers. We Were Soldiers. Like they took extras from Fort Benning um, when we were there, and in that movie, Colonel Moore. Um, Fort Benning is now named after uh, Colonel Moore, and
And say what you want about Mel Gibson as a human being. That was an amazing movie.
yeah, he portrayed Colonel Moore. He was around Fort Benning. Um, Sergeant Major Plumley was around Fort Benning until he passed. I mean, they were there. They made appearances. You should shake their hand. They were down at the infantry museum. They were there. Like they were approachable.
So you got the gist of the type of men they were. So you were able to compare that to the way that
Oh,
they
I
were
mean,
played in the
yeah,
movie.
yeah, and now granted they were in age and
Right. But the gist of a man is the gist of a
yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah. And you know, it's just, the dynamic of, that whole movie was one battle.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? It gave you an insight on how the army uh, uh, was structured at one point in time, where it was thrown together. You know, um, they just take leaders from here and here and throw them. All right, you're now the Seventh Cavalry. You know, you know what I mean? Like how things were um, just thrown together, and how Colonel Moore understood the historical significance of being in the same division Custer was. Wearing the same patch that Custer did, fighting the a similar enemy. A quote unquote inferior enemy who has been at war for so many years, fighting all these large forces and repelling them. You know what I mean? Um, yeah, and I mean, the first, um, the first major uh, air assault battle of the Vietnam War. It I don't think people I don't think people who watch that movie could understand, you know, like the little things. Like the sergeant major knew exactly how many men are in the battalion to the to the to the Joe. Like that's real stuff. Like that, and every subordinate NCO knows that. First sergeants know that in their companies, platoon sergeants know that in their platoons. Squad leaders know that in their squads. But you know, um, and then knowing how many guys you got, and then knowing we only have this many birds, and we only can put this many guys on the birds, and it takes this long round trip. So, a half a platoon is going to be on the ground by themselves. Um, like people, I don't can't grasp the logistics there.
Yeah. That movie came out right before I got promoted to E5. And I took a couple of things from that movie, and that formed the basis of how I led. And the biggest thing was the depiction of Hal Moore being the first one off the bird
Hmm.
and the last one on the bird.
Yeah.
And that's how I approach leadership. Like that was my foundation. It was I'm always going to be first in in the front, leading from the front, and I'm going to make sure everybody else is finished, gone, whatever, before I finish up. And so that right there was a huge thing that I took into me being a leader, was because that scene of him stepping on and off the runners for those helicopters was very impactful. And then the other thing that I took from that movie was when Major Crandall just disobeyed basically disobeyed orders and kept flying birds.
Yeah.
The medics wouldn't, the medevacs and stuff. Well, fuck you, I'm gonna keep doing it. And while I didn't do stuff like that, it was I was willing to put myself in a precarious professional position to make sure that the guys that were below me were taken care of. So my career was not more important than them being taken care of.
Right.
So those two con- uh, concepts in that movie were like a founding basis to how I became an NCO, because they were just when I looked at those to me, that was like, if I had to follow somebody, that's the kind of motherfucker I want to follow.
Yeah.
So that's why those two things were really important. And then the one guy that plays the young lieutenant, helping take care of his guy's feet and
Right.
stuff like that.
Right.
Those types of things, those are what you want in your leaders.
Yeah. Well, and in the same scene, the sergeant major looks at the colonel, and he's like, "That guy over there wants to win medals." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the contrast. Both of those lieutenants end up dying. You know what I mean? But that's the contrast. You can be a hard charger and also care about your soldiers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Uh, you know, um, but yeah, there there was a lot of contrast in that movie. There was a lot of like um the behind the scenes thing, like the family readiness group. Um, you know, some of the wives, the black wives were not entitled to go to places. The you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in that room, everybody are spouses, and no one had a problem with it. Outside of that room, not everybody's afforded the same. You know, all their husbands are fighting in the same war for this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But their rights at home wasn't equal. And one of the most powerful things is the casualty notification of a fucking taxi driver bringing you a goddamn Western Union, not Western Union, but a telegram. Like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? And
And the fact that she took it upon
she
herself.
had the wherewithal to say, this ain't how I want this group of women notified. And yeah, I mean,
and
it's
and and it goes to show the type of leader she was.
yeah, and that's
So was her leadership a reflection of his, or was his a reflection of hers? You know what I mean?
right.
Like,
And that is why her name is part of Fort Benning as well. Uh, it's her and his name as the two Fort Moore is now named after. So, her contribution um is recognized by the United States Army. Um so yeah, I mean, it's also nice to see um a place that I spent so many years at in a movie. Um, I wasn't there when they were. I was in Iraq when they were recording it. But yeah, it's we were soldiers, and it had the fucking kick ass soundtrack.
yeah, it does.
Fucking, I mean,
All right, so here's one. So we got that one, that one, that one, that one. Fury.
man, we got a bunch of the same.
Now, here's the neat part. I love the movie is so much enjoyable,
Uh huh.
but when you understand that there's actual factual, the guy that Fury is the tank commander that Fury is based on was a real dude.
Yep.
His tank wasn't named Fury though. It was I can't remember what it was now. But so that tank crew and that tank commander were based on actual tank crew that were one of the best
Mm-hmm.
in World War II. But also, we talked about it earlier, the final battle scene where he's doing everything on his own, that was inspired by the story of Audie Murphy.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a great movie. It's a very enjoyable movie. It's well filmed. It's well acted. But then you learn those couple of historical facts, and you're just sitting there like, what would have been like for Audie Murphy to make a movie like that, where you're like, hey, tone it down, bro.
Yeah.
People aren't going to believe this shit actually happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not so unbelievable. It's Fast and Furious type shit.
Right.
But you're like, I don't think that can happen. And then you're like, well, it's based off a true story. And you're like,
What?
yeah, um, yeah. You know, I went to Fury is one of the movies I went to with my dad, and went to Fury, went to um, uh, we went and saw Fury when I was recovering from neck surgery, and his attempt to get me out of the freaking house. We also, me and him went and saw Platoon way back in the 80s. Um, and my mom was trying to not encourage me to join the military, and my dad was like, "Well, let's go watch a movie. What can that hurt?" Um,
maybe it'll make you not want to join.
yeah, but yeah, yeah, fear. Like I like, you give it depicts giving the new guy shit. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Uh, Fucking everybody shits on the new guy. That's in every squad, and you know what I mean. And
Yeah.
no matter where you're, that's
It, there's a reason in the vocabulary of the world, the FNG,
yeah,
the
yeah,
fucking new guy.
right. The fucking new guy. Yeah, I mean, and it gives you a little glimpse on what happened when we went into towns, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It, um, I mean, we were still. I had eggs at a woman's house in fucking Iraq. So I mean, when uh you just show up at somebody's house one day and like, this is a good overwatch of that river, and that river is fucking shuttling goddamn uh Iranians in. So we're gonna stay on this rooftop, and when Iranians come in, we're gonna fucking give them the business. But it ain't like the woman's like, yeah, come on in. Like you knock on the door and say, hey, we're gonna be here a while.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, since you're here, let me fucking make you breakfast. And I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
And then, you have the person who's like, she's probably poisoning it. I'm like, that's all right. It's not an MRE, so I'll take the motherfucker.
They're not bad.
Right. So yeah, I mean um and I think each of the tank crew played their role well. And you always have that one fucking uh uh guy that he looks dirty when he gets out. Even when you step out of the shower, you still look dirty. That guy, you know.
Well,
Uh,
and again, that's another one of those movies where it really highlighted the intimacy of a small unit. A small group that everybody's working together. Everybody knows what the other guy's going to be doing so that they can be as proficient as they can be,
yep.
which is, you know, th- they really trained to be the fastest and the
Yeah.
best tank crew.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where in crews like that, when you're so tight knit, you can give each other shit, and I can fucking, we could fight, literally fight right now. But soon as we get in this tank and we close them hatches, our focus is outward.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm willing to die for you, even though I just wanted to kill you. I'm willing to, you know what I mean? Now I'm willing to die for
We
you.
were outside the tank at that point.
Right. I mean, and there was a lot of that. There was a
Yeah.
lot of strife and a lot of shit back and forth. And but when they got in the tank and when it was the end, they were all willing to stand right here and to be the end together. So yeah, Fury Fury is on my list as well. Um, I have Dunkirk
Oh,
on my list. Um, you know, it tells a story of the evacuation of Allied soldiers from the beaches of Dunkirk during World War II. Um, yeah, like it told a different story.
Yeah.
You know,
It,
it's
it was basically a retreat.
right, and it's not war is not all sunshine and rainbows. It's all not all wins. It's not all and hell. I mean, the movies we told today, none of them were fucking wins. You know what I mean? Like the heroes die in the end of all the motherfuckers. So I mean, but that's um, it gives you a different perspective of uh the war and how it affected um you know the civilian population and how their lives were altered. And so um and it's just a well done movie. um so Dunkirk.
Uh, one of the next ones I have on my list is one we've talked about, especially last week and or the week, no, the hero episode, The Outpost.
Yeah, you know it's amazing um how you can look at the Outpost and be like, like it was a shit show. It was, you know, again, um, members of that company had to do heroic shit because people put them in a bad position.
What?
Yeah, I mean, you're in a no win position at the base of a valley when you know you're in a mountainous country fighting people who have lived their lives in mountains. So, instead of making them walk up to you, you let them shoot down on you.
Yeah.
And that's
I mean, I have the high ground, Anakin.
right. I mean, uh,
I mean,
yeah,
even Obi-Wan got it. I got the high ground.
I'm I tell people all the time, I'm I love fighting from the high ground. I will go out of my way. I will ride my motorcycle 400 fucking miles to reach the moral high ground,
The mountain of right.
right? I I love fighting from the high ground, and I will position myself always so that you know I'm on the high ground. And for these guys, you know, for these guys to be put in a situation where um it's not ideal. I talked earlier about the one third, two thirds rule. You know, all that goes out, all that goes out the window as soon as you put yourself at the bottom of people shooting down on you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You go from your military might is less effective when you are the fish in the barrel,
Yeah. I think that as far as a movie, I think The Outpost, one, it tells an amazing story.
right?
Um, but two, and also it gives a good glimpse into what life was like in Afghanistan
Yeah,
because it was different.
right. And the turnover, they turned over company commanders. Um, so as platoons, as a company, you have to adjust to your new commander. Um, and
He's got to figure out what you can and can't do,
right, right, and
and it's a lot to take in when you're getting shellacked from a higher position.
yeah, and it's one of those things where Guys should not have had to be a hero that day.
Correct.
You know what I mean? The,
But it shows the makeup of the men.
yeah. I mean, but when you're in it, you have to embrace the suck,
Yep.
right? Like this sucks, but I'm in it now.
Yep.
You know, it's the same way. It's the same way when you're talking about sending troops to Iraq, sending troops to Afghanistan, sending troops to Somalia, sending troops to wherever. How, you know, we shouldn't do that. I got it, but they're there now. You know what I mean? We shouldn't be at the bottom of a mountain, but we're here now.
Yep.
So now what the fuck, you know what I mean?
The only
You
way we were going to fix this was not be here, but now we're here.
Yep,
So now we got to make a best of the situation.
yep. So what do we do? Our mortar men have to be shit hot. Have to be. You know what I mean? And they have to, you know, get TRPs all over this goddamn valley. And when we call out, you know, TRP1, TRP2, uh, target reference points, you have to be shit hot. Them guns have to be ready 24 fucking 7. You know, dudes are out there running in their fucking boxer shorts with IBAs on because pants don't matter right now. Fucking laying lead down range matters. And yeah, I mean yeah. And that's you know, the people who are not in that fight made it tough for the people who were fighting. And that's the problem.
Yeah. Which we like 4 or 5 other movies we've already talked about.
Yes, but that's the fucking problem. There, you know, there's people who did not shoot one round that day. Said we're going to make a patrol base at the bottom of a fucking valley and let everybody that lives in these fucking mountains take a shot at us anytime they want.
Yep.
You know, so if there's a theme, if there's a theme for these movies, it's that. You know, you look, yeah, fucking the newer movies have great cinematography. They have great, you know, great direction. They have great CGI. They have great, you know, um,
Production values.
production value. And
Like not
they
this.
they they, they make, you know, you sit there and you're entertained by what's on the screen. But when you served, when you were in Iraq, when you've had people shoot at you and you're like, this is fucking stupid. This is stupid. There's no, you know, uh, there's no reason that um, the Ty Carters and the Clint Robichets should be Medal of Honor recipients for a battle when fucking people put them in a no-win situation, but then they won. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I don't know, but that
It's a great movie.
oh, I mean, but if you can see past the bullets and the cool shit, right?
It's the message.
Yeah. I
The
mean,
the
I've never have a
the
company commander saying, "I'm gonna take this LMTV on the side of this fucking goat trail." You know, I've never had that happen, but you know, what I mean,
still a good movie.
yeah, I'm with you.
I'm just trying to bring you back down.
But that's, you know, it goes back to, you know, when I left Iraq and we were in Kuwait and people in Kuwait saw our patches and immediately called us baby killers, you know, because the stories of, you know, how many Iraqis that the Third Infantry Division killed during the initial invasion, you know, and you're like, what the fuck? And the people calling you baby killers are fucking military people. And you're like, what the fuck, man? Um, like listen, fucking, you put me here. I'm gonna do a fucking job to the best of my ability. If you don't want babies killed, then figure out a way to get all the babies gone. You know
Yep.
what I mean? But I don't know.
You got another one?
I don't.
All right, I got three more, but
Three more.
I made sure I had a bunch because I figured we'd have some on the same. But I'm gonna loosely talk, or I'm gonna briefly talk about one of them,
Okay.
and that's only because we talked a lot about it before, and that's 12 Strong.
Good movie. Yep.
So I mean, it tells a great story.
Uh huh.
It's a good movie. There's a lot of factual basis to it, but of
Right.
course, like any movie, Hollywood's taking some liberties.
Yep.
Last week when you talked, or week last week, no, week before last when
Yep.
you talked about Horse Soldier Whiskey,
Right.
you went into a lot of that. So that's
Yep.
why. Uh, Second one, we've talked about all these ones from these movies from the 20th century, um, but I felt we needed to include one from the 19th century, and that would be Glory.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Very, very powerful movie.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
For those of you that don't know, Glory talks about is a movie about a all black
Mm-hmm.
Union army
Yeah.
um, during the Civil War, and it's really good at capturing what it must have been like
Yeah.
for those men in a world that was not okay with them being considered men.
Right.
Um,
And their willingness, and you know, you, there's movies out there that show the willingness of um African Americans that are willing to fight. You know what I mean? Civil War, Glory being one of them. There's um, movies about World War I and African Americans wanting to fight. And we spoke about the Buffalo Soldiers. Um, you know how there was, it seems unfathomable now that there was units then that were segregated,
yeah,
and you know, um, during World War II, African Americans were relegated to um, help jobs on ships. You know what I mean? Um,
yeah, we'd already talked about quite a few because I would have I wanted to include Tuskegee Airmen,
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Red Tail,
yeah.
Men of Honor, like all three amazing movies, but
Listen,
you only got so many spots.
listen. I'll tell you this. I don't cry, and that ain't the man thing. I just don't cry. I I don't know. I don't even know if I have the fucking ability. Right? I don't cry, but and I definitely don't get emotional over movies. But god damn it, fucking bosun mate, first class, fucking Carl Bashir, fucking standing up in that goddamn courtroom and making those steps fucking hit me in the goddamn chest, man.
Cookie, get your fucking
Right?
ass over
And
here.
I mean, and he wasn't a bosun's mate then when he, after
Yeah.
he lost his leg. Um, um, but yeah, I mean, fucking Men of Honor, Jesus Christ, that's a powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, there's really no um, war scenes in that, but Jesus Christ,
Now
that's a
my last one is one that isn't what we've talked about as a cinematic entertain
uh-huh.
movie type thing. It's a documentary, but it takes place during Afghanistan, and that's Restrepo.
Yeah, right. Man, yeah. Um,
That if you want to know what it's like, no Hollywood stuff,
right.
like true, guerrilla footage basically
Yeah,
of what it was like for guys to be in these mountain fobs, um, taking on the Taliban and being in Afghanistan and what they went through and what day-to-day chaos was like,
Yeah.
you need to watch the documentary Restrepo.
Yeah.
And that is a powerful movie.
And why combat outposts are called Restrepo.
Yeah.
And that's named for somebody. You know what I mean?
Bob Keating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're named for somebody. And why? And and the people back here who again who say, well, we shouldn't be in Afghanistan. We are, and this is what the fuck we're doing.
Yeah.
Right? And regardless of what you like, this is what embracing the suck looks like. You know what I mean? This is what we're doing.
If the Outpost is Hollywood's version of what happens at a cob like that in Afghanistan, Restrepo is the real life version.
Yeah. And you know what? It's not far off.
Nope.
It's not far off.
No. That documentary, the first time I watched that, I was shocked. I was dumbfounded. I was in awe. I was like the gamut of emotions watching what those and these are kids that are doing this that are the same age as my boys right
Yeah.
now. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like 22, Jason is 25.
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at what these boys are going through and I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck?
And it shows the fucking complete insanity that fucking soldiers are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like 1 minute I'm fucking trying to shoot people in the face, the next minute I'm playing my fucking guitar, I'm playing spades or fucking Call of Duty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's and that, the fucking you live for the downtime because the when you're on, it's on.
And it's we've talked before about how when you're there, you have to compartmentalize so you can do your job.
Yeah.
That shows how much they compartmentalize to do their job. But then when you come home, you uncompartmentalize, and that's what leads to a lot of problems. But that I think that if you've never been part of combat, you've never served any of that, if you want a microcosm of what it's actually like for boots on the ground, like real life type shit, watch Restrepo.
Yeah.
It is an amazing documentary. Amazing.
Yeah. I agree with that. It is a good.
But that's why it was the last one on my list because I was like, well, we said movies.
Yeah.
This is technically a documentary, but
Yeah.
it's so powerful.
And there's several out there. The Hornet's Nest is one. A filmmaker and his son, they get embedded with a group of Marines, and then they get further embedded with some Army units, I think. But yeah, I mean, it'll show you, it gives you a glimpse inside of small unit tactics. It gives you a glimpse inside that, um, when guns are firing, no need for politeness. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it you can feel the how people care about each other
Yes.
in Restrepo,
Yeah.
or in these movies where, again, as a squad leader, as a team leader, whatever, I might have been dogging your ass. You might have had to be doing push-ups or whatever right before we went out on mission because you forgot something. But as soon as we take contact, all that goes out the window, and we're focused together on the objective ahead of us.
If you truly ever questioned whether the brotherhood and the love that guys have for each other in a setting like that, watch that movie.
Yeah,
It'll show you just how much you love the guy next to you and what they mean to you. Not just Um, you know, he's going to take care of me and I'm going to take care of him. But it truly is an extremely close bond that's forged in fire.
Yeah, and you you can see the bond built, and with every with every shot, inward or out, outgoing or incoming, with every shot, it just galvanizes, and and that is a microcosm of every fucking platoon in every conflict. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But now, now in with today's technologies, and you got them, them kids that GoPros and fucking, you know, we have so much more access now. Excuse me, than we ever did. You know?
Could you imagine guys in like World War I, World War II with GoPros?
Yeah. No.
Whew,
I
that'd have been
mean,
crazy.
right. Um.
Now, one more movie. We're not going to talk about said movie, but I know there's a particular movie about EOD that you think is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I heard something about that movie last night that gave me a slightly different perspective on it.
Okay.
I was watching a live stream between Angry Cops and the Fat Electrician because AK guy Brandon Herrera's primary runoff was last night, so they were following the election. And somebody was talking about the Hurt Locker, and the comment that Rich Angry Cop said was that that movie is basically a bunch of stories, urban legends, all kinds of things from the EOD community rolled up into one character.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, that makes more sense to me now.
Oh, I absolutely no. I absolutely get it, and I I think this goes back to one point in time. I wanted to write a screenplay, um, or write a book, and then I figured out me not smart. So uh, I quickly, quickly figured out me not smart. So, but now with AI, who knows? I might have a book out there one of these days. But you know, that's kind of how I was gonna, the book I was gonna write was gonna be, um, like fiction based off of, um,
Fictionalized truth.
yeah, fictionalized truth. Everything in the movie happened, but I was going to take 4 deployments and roll them up in one deployment, because, um, you can spend a whole movie. I mean, I used to ride around in a truck for 18 hours and nothing happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How, how, how long do you put that in a movie? You know what I mean? No, nobody wants to sit there for 18 hours and watch me look out my fucking windshield, but the times
Again,
something
me not smart.
the times that something did happen, you know, and that's 47 months. Like I said, 4-year combat veteran. Anyway, um,
I'm not mad that you said it. I'm mad that you threw off the intro because we do something a certain way and you didn't give a motherfucker a heads up.
I mean, uh, you know, you got to roll with the punches.
Yeah, Steve tour.
Yeah, there you go. So, yeah, but in doing so, I'm like, it has to be. I can't put shit on paper that's not authentic. Um, and granted, you do a screenplay, and as soon as it gets bought, it's out of your hands,
They're gonna Hollywood it,
right? It's out of your hands. So, um, but if you do a book,
and then they option that.
yes,
At least you can say that's the story I told.
right. but
I
and
gotcha.
that's where during doing a screenplay, you know, transfer to doing a book. And my friend Shawn Jones, she always wanted to write a book, so we did a fucking handshake on that, and then you know we never it never we did a lot of research um, on writing this book, and then never came to fruition. But yeah, I mean it's one of those things where you want to tell the stories of, you know, there's not a lot of what's the one um fucking god damn fucking dumbass movie. Thank you for your service.
Hmm.
Dumb as fuck. Dumb as fuck. Um it's just I could sit here and break down thank you for your service and at so many fucking levels and be like, nah, nah, dumb, fucking stupid. You know what I mean? Let's take the most severe cases of post traumatic stress, and that's all we're going to talk about. And you know, fucking dumb. And Amy
I'm glad I
Schumer
didn't.
and
I'm glad I
Amy
didn't put it on
Schumer
my list.
Amy Schumer's in that movie, so it's automatically dumb.
I'm glad I didn't put it on
I
my
mean,
list.
it's what it's. I mean,
Wouldn't want to trigger you.
but oh no, I'm just but the Hurt Locker, you know, like it's critically acclaimed. Like, oh, this is fucking like that ain't what fucking EOD does. You know what I mean?
It's an entertaining movie.
Oh, well, I mean,
So here's the way I look at it. I call them popcorn flicks. You have to suspend your knowledge
oh,
of and just
yeah,
enjoy it for what it
yeah,
is. You
yeah,
know, it's don't look at it for realism and things like
yeah,
that. You
yeah.
know, you wouldn't look at Starship Troopers as a realistic depiction,
Right,
but it's a very entertaining movie,
right.
and there's a lot of um
They have boobies.
they do. There's a lot of social commentary that's in that movie as well.
Yeah.
So
Um, yeah, I get it. Like, I'm not one of them dudes that um I mean I am, but I don't vocally bullshit. Like, you know, like there's people that can look at movies and be like, his fucking dust his fucking dust cap is down or up or fucking whatever. Like his bolts to the rear. Like there's people that look at movies and you know and like um yeah. Like I like watching, you know, the first Navy SEALs with fucking Charlie Sheen.
it's a great movie.
Right?
It's such a guilty pleasure.
Yeah, but like, you know, no one, you know,
Yeah,
and SEALs will tell you that's like a whole career of, you know, there's SEALs that spend their whole career in the teams that don't do half that shit.
but it's still a good movie to
But yeah,
watch.
but they're doing a whole career worth of shit. You know, like I'm gonna I'm gonna mash everything cool Navy SEALs do and put it in one movie. You know what I mean? But yeah,
Missing in action, Delta
I
Force.
mean
They're fun movies.
they are. Delta Force is no. But yeah, so but yeah, Restrepo, all those man, I'm telling you, there's a lot of documentaries, The Killing Fields. There's a lot of documentaries out there that, you know, I find myself watching.
Have you watched Beast of No Nation?
I don't think so.
It's about the child soldiers in Africa.
I might
That if you haven't seen it yet, I haven't seen it yet either, but I've watched some things on it. That's definitely one that's going to be on my list of things to
yeah,
watch.
I
And there was another one, Son of a Biscuit.
there's a there's a movie in the works about Chapman. Um originally Jake Gyllenhaal was supposed to play John Chapman.
Which, by the way, The Covenant was a pretty good movie too.
Not bad. You know what I mean? Not bad. But they are going to do a movie about that.
I didn't ask, by the way. Do we have a victim for this week's segment?
Oh,
Because if not, I have the perfect one.
well, come on with it.
So, are we done with our movies?
Yeah, I'm done.
All right. So for this week's segment, fuck that guy.
Fuck that guy.
We're going to go with the politicians that we talked about
Yeah,
through the whole episode.
yeah,
So I mean, we don't really need to go on another 20-minute rant of fuck them, but basically, yeah, fuck them. Guys wouldn't be in the position that we're in now. You know, people like Andy's dad who came home to anything but a welcome
yep,
after Vietnam, and you know, you being told by other service members that you're baby killers, and the gamut of everything in between, if it wasn't for the politicians putting guys in these positions. So for that reason and all of the reasons we've discussed previously in this episode, fuck those guys.
yeah. And you know, they exacerbate fucking situations. You
Yes.
know, they don't. I don't want to say I'm wrong. I don't want to say. You know what I mean? Like, I don't. I don't want to seem wrong, but you don't give the fighting men and women of this country what they need. You know what I mean? Um, many look at the war in Iraq and say the United States lost that war. I'll tell you this: we took over Iraq in 22 days. 22 days. Had motherfuckers walking through the streets with white fucking anything white they could hold up, so we wouldn't shoot them. Right? George Bush can stand on the a carrier and say mission accomplished. And then what they did was they called off the dogs. You know, now
And
I'm
created
not
a power vacuum.
I'm not huh?
And created a power vacuum.
I'm not saying we should just stayed in Iraq for 20 years murking motherfuckers. That ain't what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is force on force, there ain't nobody in this world that can compete with the United States military, force on force.
We don't lose force on force. We lose policy.
Yeah, because other forces don't have ROEs. They don't go by the Geneva Convention. They're not moral. Uh, they don't have moral faculties, right? After so long of fighting a war, you know, taking hits and not being able to deliver blows, it takes a toll on your psyche as well. You know what I mean? When you're asked to get in the truck and ride down the road and something may blow up on you, and when it does, take it like a champ, it don't sit well with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean
Because in
it's
this country, one of the basic things we're taught is self-defense.
right.
You should be able to defend yourself,
Yep.
and especially against enemy combatants.
Yeah. And you would think so. And you know, and let me tell you, last thing on this subject, like I didn't give a shit about and I've always voted because you know I thought it's my duty to, um, but I didn't understand politics until September 2010. In September 2010, Operation Iraqi Freedom ended, and it became Operation New Dawn. Right? What changed? Nothing. Um, the last combat troops in Iraq left. Um, and, you know, I remember calling home and my mom's like, "You're coming home." I'm like, no, I'm not. Oh, yeah. News said all combat troops are leaving Iraq. I'm like, yeah. I was in a combat action brigade, right? It was a new catchphrase for the military, CABs and combat action brigade. And in one day, we went from a combat action brigade to a advise and assist brigade. What what changed in that day? Nothing,
Semantics.
right? President Obama said all combat troops will be out of Iraq by this day, and then said all combat troops were out of Iraq by that day. And everyone's saying they're advising and assisting the Iraqi army. I got wounded fucking after that. You know what I mean? So that was the eye opener of the terminology that politicians use.
December 1st, 2011, because I was over there with KBR, was the day we handed everything back to the U.S. government, as far as the VBC and things like that. Now, um, because we were drawing down and withdrawing from Iraq. So everything that was after that was part of the State Department mission.
Right.
So, you know, the air base at Biop was still active,
Mhm.
but it wasn't an Air Force base anymore. It was a State Department facility. So it's all about just renaming
It's all
shit.
about terminology.
Yep.
And it's all about uh, saying what you want to say to make the American people right. And half the motherfuckers will believe you, and the other half won't.
Yeah.
And that's no matter who's standing in the White House, half the motherfuckers are going to believe you, whatever you say. The other half are not going to believe whatever you say. So I don't know why anybody would ever want to be fucking president of the United States. But it,
It is what it is.
yeah, I mean, it is what it is. So
We hope you enjoyed our, I don't know, you call it a movie review, a movie list, shit that we think's awesome.
yeah,
We're hoping to do a few more of these as the season progresses. Maybe, not more war movies, but other things like this. Also, kind of back off a little bit from the heaviness that was the last couple of episodes.
yeah,
But yeah, so we apologize for last week's snafu. We had a production hiccup.
100% my fault. 100% my fault.
we
I'll
had a
take that. I'll take that hit.
we had a minor production issue last week.
Oh,
So we've already checked everything's good for this week. So
yeah.
you'll be able to see us and all of our glory.
Yep, yep,
But other than that, we can't wait for you guys to see us next week.
yeah. And we out.